welcome back to the Claremont Classic Garage. Today we're back working on our 1948 Ford 8N, and what we're going to do today is get the engine attached back to the rest of it and dressed out. First thing we're going to do before we put the engine on is change the input seal on the transmission. So it's pretty easy. You just pull those springs off. They're the return springs for your throwout bearing. You don't really have to take them off, but it just gets the throwout bearing out of the way. There's your throwout bearing. We can clean that up too while we're at it. And then this, your input retainer, is just held in with 4 3/8 bolts. So we'll get those all out. And then once we got all the 4 bolts out, you just grab this thing and out it comes. So there's our input shaft with the retainer. I cleaned the retainer in the solvent tank, so while we wait for that to dry, we'll just kind of give this a spruce up with some emery. Give our new seal every chance to seal. And we'll just kind of clean it up here, the pilot. You can also, if you want, get a wire brush and make sure there's nothing in your clutch splines. That all looks pretty good. There's a little bit of crap in there coming out. This thing sat for a long time, you got to remember. Okay. Our bearing is in good shape. And you also have to check this. You see, there's another bearing race right in the end of the input shaft, and it's fine. If that's messed up, I don't think you can even buy these parts anymore. You're looking for another transmission. So now we're going to change the input seal. You can see here, this is the original leather seal. It's an oldie. So we'll just get a seal remover in there, and hopefully it'll come out. They don't always. Here she comes. There we go. So there's our original seal out. Yeah, look at that. Old leather seal. Wow. We'll give that bore a clean. Now we can knock the seal in. We've got the lip pointing up, which is toward the oil, which is how you want it. And you can use, a socket or something. I found this old installer that is from who knows what, but it seems to be the right size this. So we'll knock it down. You'll feel it when it hits the bottom, and then we'll be good. You can also, if the bore where the seal goes is a little gouged up, put a little silicone in the bottom of the bore to kind of seal it once it gets in there. Nothing wrong with that. Some seals you don't need to do it because they've got sealant applied to the outside of them from the factory, but this one didn't. It was just plain. So now we can grease this up a little more. We can grease up our bearing race. Grease up where the seal goes. And we can put this baby back in. And then once you get down to the seal, you just kind of twist and in she goes. Perfect. Now, a little grease there. We've got a new gasket. I'll put some silicone on that. You don't have to use a ton of silicone on these end tractors. A lot of the gaskets are pretty thick, but this gasket is pretty thin, and it's in a place where if you don't get it right and it starts leaking, you're in a world of pain. You have to take the engine back off. So before we do that, we'll go into the transmission housing and make sure the other half where this gasket goes is nice and clean. Now we can put it back in. It doesn't have a top or bottom so long as the spring tabs for the throwout bearing are out to the sides. So it can be this way or that way. Now we can go ahead and put our throwout bearing back on. Now's a good time to change this if you feel like you need to change it. But you can just check it and make sure it's okay. So you just push down on it, and if it's smooth and quiet, it's good. We can put it back in. So we're going to go ahead and put it back in. There, I'll get the springs hooked to it, and then just operate the pedal with your finger and make sure it works nicely. You don't want to put grease or oil or anything on here because it'll attract clutch dust and dirt and crap, and it'll actually make the thing stick. So you want, that's just nice and clean and free. There is kind of oily vapor floating around in here that will keep this somewhat lubricated, but you just don't want to soak it with anything. Now we can put the flywheel and the clutch on. So you can see here our pilot bearing. It works okay, but the rear seal is gone from it. So we'll just pop another one in. It's just a 6203 bearing. You can get these things anywhere. Any auto parts place or any bearing house. They're common as dirt. So you just like that. In she goes. Just make sure when you're pounding on them, you only pound on the outside of it. There we go. Get it in flush. So, I've got a pilot stud stuck in the back of the flywheel to guide this thing on. We just get this thing started over our guide stud here. You'll see there when you put it on, it goes on. There's two little dowels in the back of the crankshaft. If you've got it turned 90 degrees, it won't go on. So that's good. Now we'll get the hardware for it and get it installed. So now the bolts pass through this little plate. I don't think this flywheel is all the way on, but we'll put a little blue Loctite on them to make sure they stay done up. Excuse me, Cooper. This is so much fun with two 9-month-old dogs. Look out, buddy. Okay, there we go. They've all started by like one thread. I'll grab my brass drift and knock the flywheel on the rest of the way. Then we'll get those bolts torqued down. And we'll just make sure that the torque wrench clicks at 60. I have to admit I blasted them up with a little impact gun, but they're tight. Good. Now it's time to put the pressure plate and the disc on. So we use an alignment tool, right? It goes through the splines in the disc and centers it perfectly when you put the pressure plate over. If you haven't got one of these, don't sweat it. You just before you put it on the engine, you just sit the disc on the pressure plate to kind of get an idea of what it feels like, and you just it takes a little bit of jiggling around, but you just put it on and just kind of keep it like that while you tighten it up. And believe me, that's close enough. I've done that many times when I didn't have the right tool. So we're going to put the disc on now, and you can see it's got a lot more hub on one side than the other. Obviously, if you put it backwards, you're not going to have much luck. So it goes this way. A lot of times, if you have a new clutch, it'll be marked flywheel side. So that goes in there like that. Our disc is now centered on the flywheel. I'll go grab the pressure plate and we'll get that on. Now we'll put it on. And pressure plate bolts, you can tell they've got a funny long shoulder on them. That's so you're not putting the torque against the threaded part of the bolt, because that would shear it. Cooper, excuse me, please. Thank you. All right, so when we're putting the pressure plate on, we just slowly start all the bolts in and just kind of work our way around, tighten it gradually. Pull it down nice and smooth and even. You can see it there. Then we'll grab our torque wrench and make sure that's about 25 foot-pounds. There we are. She's all torqued up. And last thing, don't forget to take this out before you try and put the engine on, or you'll be scratching your head wondering why it won't go on. Now we can go ahead and push the engine onto the transmission. One place you can put a little grease that helps is on the pilot of the input shaft. It'll help it get into that bearing. I've put some 7/16 studs in a couple of holes, and that should help guide it in. And I've got a ratchet here, so we can turn the engine a bit if we've got to get this spline to line up. So let's see how we make out. All right, let's see how we make out. Has to go up about 1 inch. There's that side, a tiny bit more. It's just, okay, so let's see here. All righty, and we'll just turn it a bit. Let it down a hair. Just a blip. Oh, there we go. It was a bit of a struggle, but we got her in. So we can go around and start catching some of these bolts. Some of them come back out later because brackets and stuff go on them. But for now, we're just going to get them all caught and get this thing joined together solid like. Okay, so we'll just gently pull a little bit on each one of these bolts, and it'll slowly come together. You don't want to caulk it or anything. That's how you end up with broken housings and stuff, but just pulling it in nice and gentle and easy and even, it's fine. Once they're all pulled in, I just run around and, do I have the right socket here? Yeah, it just won't go on. I go around, I'll have to get that one with a wrench. Make sure they're all snugged up to 60 foot-pounds. So first we're going to put on the strap mount for the alternator. So I usually set them on a couple of flat washers like that, just in case there's any part of the cylinder head that's proud that it could interfere with. So there we go. And if you remember when we built the engine up, we put those extra long studs in these two locations, and that's precisely why. Now we've installed the spark plug wire tube, and I got these spark plugs all cleaned up and serviced up. We're just gonna put a little anti-seize on and put them in for keeps. Now we can install the starter. You have to be very careful because there's nothing that holds the ends of it together except for these nuts that you put on when you take it off. So we're going to leave one nut on because sometimes you have to do quite a bit of jiggling to get the Bendix past the flywheel here. You see how that hole is egged out? They're not always egged out enough. Well, we'll see. This one seems to be egged out plenty. And once we get one bolt started, we're home free. There we go. Yeah. This tractor, when I got it, was missing the starter. Thankfully, we had a nice new one kicking around.
Yeah, so right now we have 4th in the wild card race in the West.
I've got the water jacket drain valve, our engine oil dipstick, and the breather tube installed. This, you just rely on the paint. When you paint this thing, put some paint on the part that goes into the engine block. That'll hold it solid. And you just use a block of wood and a little hammer and tap it in. Now, the breather cap that goes on top of this, it's got a little filter in it. So you just get that out of there. You can buy a new one of these if you want. You can clean it up. A little bit of dust in it. And then you just hold it up to a light, you know. And if you can see light through the element, it's good. So that goes on there. And it's just got this little wing nut to hold it together. And then it just pushes onto there. Now we'll get our oil filter together. It's pretty straightforward. It's got a couple of rubber seals on it. You push that down over there. Oops. And then there's a gasket that goes on the bottom side of the lid. I've actually found this nice rubber one here. And then a bolt that'll have a fiber washer, or in this case a copper washer, and that seals it all up. Once the oil filter is on, the next thing to put on is the oil fitting. So this is a special fitting just for 8 ends. 9 ends have one similar, but it's just a little bit different. So this goes down to your main oil gallery. This port goes up to the oil pressure gauge, and that one goes over there to the filter. Originally on 9 ends, the outlet of the filter just had a little short line and dumped right there, right back into the sump. But they found later that the governor assembly was getting starved for oil and not really lasting as long as it should. So they modified it to include this line that comes around and dumps the oil from the filter into the governor to keep it living a long, happy life. And this is something that gets modified on many older tractors. You'll see this has been added on to them. Now we'll build up the water pump. We just have to put the backing plate on, and then the pump itself mounts on those 3 studs on the front. Now we can pop the distributor on and build it up. I'm not going to get into fixing it all up. That's in a previous video in this series when we first got the tractor and got it running. You can see all that. But do remember that the drive key on these is offset, so you can only put the distributor in one way. So just make sure you've got that to the right side when you put it in, and it'll be just fine. And of course, we're using a new gasket. Hi guys. That's on there nicely. Now, important stuff. There's a gasket that goes in that little groove around the distributor cap. Make sure that's there. You can buy a little kit. It's only a few dollars. It's called the Distributor Gasket Kit. And it comes with the mounting gasket. It comes with this one that goes in behind there. Come on. There we go. And it comes with the top gasket. So there, now we can put our cap on, and oh, it's got a busted tower. Look at that. Oh well, I'll look around. I probably have another one somewhere, but for now, this is what I've got, so that's what we'll put on. There's our distributor all buttoned up. There's one last step I want to do on the engine dress out before I close out this video. But I forgot to paint one bracket. So while I wait for the paint on that to dry, I went ahead and I put the running board bracket and the radius rod socket on, because that is the upstop for our clutch pedal, and I can adjust the clutch now. So you can feel there, that's your free play. If you look down in there, you can see what they mean by free play. It's the amount that the throwout bearing has to travel before it hits the fingers, the operating fingers on the clutch, or the release fingers, I guess you would say. So how they want that measured is 3/4 of an inch at the pedal, and you can see we've got plenty more than that. Yeah, so we've got about 1.5 inches. So how you adjust that is by, you pull out this clevis pin and you turn this eye bolt, and you can adjust the clutch that way. I turned the eye bolt out 1.5 turns, and we'll see what we've got now. It's at 26.5. It's actually a little, let me look at it better here. 26 5/8, 26. So we're not going to cry over 1/8 of an inch. They want 3/4, we've got 5/8. We'll call that a victory. And I can push this pin the rest of the way through and put the cotter pin in. Oh, we got her all sorted out. We've got good free play. What was screwing me up, the clevis pin had kind of a worn spot in it. So we put a new clevis pin in it, and that solved that problem. So we are good to go here. Last thing we did here was get the alternator mounted on, and I got to look around at my stuff. I grabbed a belt, but this is the wrong belt. This is a belt for a generator. The generator has a much larger pulley, and it uses this longer belt. I need a belt for an alternator. I will look in my stuff. I know I've got some around here somewhere. that'll do it for this one. So our engine is on now and dressed out. In the next video, we are going to deal with the back end of it. So we'll put the shift cover on and we'll do all our hydraulic stuff. Get all our 3-point hitch and our hydraulic pump and everything done. I hope you'll join us for that. And please, if you have not already, down below, you know there's a subscribe button, a bell for notifications. There's comments. You could leave a comment. I love chatting with you, end tractor enthusiasts. And hit the like button if you like what you see. Anyway, until next time, I want to thank you for tuning in and hope you'll tune in again. And this is Kevin checking out from the Claremont Classic Garage. So long for now.